I'm Ingrid. I'm 30 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my own parents threw me a birthday party just to publicly disown me in front of our entire family. 53 relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, a private room at the nicest restaurant in town. I walked in thinking it was a surprise celebration. I walked out. Well, I'll get to that. But here's what my parents didn't know. They weren't the only ones with a plan that night. And the woman sitting in the corner, the aunt they'd erased from our family 20 years ago, she'd been waiting for this moment. Before I take you back to that night, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story actually resonates with you. Also, I'd love to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now let me take you back 4 weeks to the phone call that started everything. I was elbow deep in wet clay when my phone buzzed. The studio smelled like earth and coffee, and I almost didn't answer. Then I saw the name on the screen, Mom. My mother didn't call. She texted, short, clipped messages that read like orders. So when her name lit up my phone, my stomach did something strange. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up. Ingrid. Her voice was honey, sweet, almost warm. That was the first red flag. I hope I'm not interrupting your little hobby. I'm working, Mom. What's going on? Your father and I have been talking. She paused, letting the words hang. It's time the family came together for your 30th birthday. I nearly dropped the phone. In 30 years, my mother had never once called my birthday special. Most years, she forgot entirely. On my 25th, I sat by the phone all day. No one called. Not her, not Dad, not Meredith. A family dinner? I heard myself say. For my birthday? The whole family wants to see you. Her tone sharpened just slightly. Don't be late. Saturday, 7 o'clock, the Sterling. The Sterling, the most expensive restaurant in town. The place where my parents announced Meredith's medical school acceptance. The place where they celebrated everything that mattered to them. I'll be there, I said. Good. Click. I stood in my studio, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. My hands were trembling, leaving clay fingerprints on the screen. Something felt off, but hope, that treacherous, stubborn thing, whispered in the back of my mind. Maybe they've changed. Maybe this time will be different. I should have listened to my gut instead. 2 days later, Meredith showed up at my studio. She never visited. Not once in the 3 years since I'd opened this place. But there she was, standing in my doorway in her pristine white coat, looking around like she'd stepped into a foreign country. Cute space, she said. It wasn't a compliment. What do you want, Meredith? She picked up a ceramic vase, turned it over, set it down carelessly. I've been thinking about Grandma's house. There it was. The real reason. The beach house isn't for sale. It's just sitting there, Ingrid. She finally looked at me. Empty, while my clinic is drowning in debt. Grandma left it to me. That was her decision. Meredith's jaw tightened. Grandma's dead. She doesn't need a beach house. But I need capital. The family needs that money. I set down my sculpting tool, carefully, slowly. That house is where Grandma taught me to make my first pot. It's not just anything to me. God, you're so sentimental. She rolled her eyes. This is exactly why Mom and Dad... She stopped herself. Why Mom and Dad what? She smiled. That perfect practice smile she used on patients. Nothing. Forget it. You should come to dinner Saturday. Mom has... plans. The word hung in the air between us. Plans, I repeated. Mm-hmm. She was already walking toward the door. See you there, sis. Wear something nice. The whole family will be watching. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood frozen among my pottery wheels and half-finished pieces, her words echoing in my head. The whole family will be watching. Plans. What exactly had I agreed to? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the beach house. About Grandma. Her name was Rosemary. Rosemary Harmon. And she was the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I was enough. I was 15 the first summer she took me to that house. My parents had shipped me off. Too difficult, they said. Needs discipline. And I arrived angry, sullen, ready to hate everything. But Grandma didn't try to fix me. She just handed me a lump of clay. Your hands create, Ingrid. She guided my fingers on the pottery wheel, her voice soft over the sound of the ocean outside. That's a gift your mother will never understand. It was the first time anyone had called anything about me a gift. Not a problem, not a disappointment. A gift. Every summer after that, I went back. We made pottery together, walked the beach at sunrise, talked about everything and nothing. She came to my first exhibition when I was 22, the only family member who showed up. She sat in the front row, tears in her eyes, clapping so hard her hands turned red. 6 months ago, she died in her sleep. Peaceful, they said. Like she just decided it was time. She left me the beach house. And a small wooden box I hadn't been able to open yet. The night before the dinner, I finally understood what I'd lost when she died. It wasn't just her. It was my only proof that I was lovable, my only witness. Without Grandma, I had no one in that family who saw me. Not really. Or so I thought. I had no idea that someone else had been watching all along. The pressure started 3 days before the dinner. First, it was subtle. A text from my cousin Emma. "Hey, heard you might be selling the beach house? That's so generous of you." I wasn't selling anything. Who told her that? Then Dad called. His voice was ice. "Your mother is very upset, Ingrid." I gripped the phone tighter. "About what?" "The house. You know about what." He sighed. That long, disappointed sigh I'd heard my whole life. "We gave you everything. We supported your artistic pursuits, even when they embarrassed us. And now, when the family needs you, you refuse to help." "Grandma left it to me, Dad. In her will. That was her choice." "Wills can be contested." His voice dropped, cold and deliberate. "Loyalty to family shouldn't have to be." The threat hung in the air between us. I felt my chest tighten. Was I being selfish? The question had haunted me for weeks. Meredith's clinic was struggling, I knew that much. My parents had poured money into her education, her career, and here I was, sitting on a property worth over $1 million. But every time I considered giving in, I heard Grandma's voice. "Promise me, sweetheart, never let them make you small." "If you really cared about this family," Dad continued, "you'd do the right thing. Come to dinner. We'll discuss it like adults. And if I don't agree to sell?" Silence. Then I suppose we'll know where your priorities lie." He hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time that night, doing the math. If I sold the house, I'd lose the last piece of her. If I kept it, I'd lose them. But somewhere deep down, a voice whispered, "Have you ever really had them?" The night before the dinner, I pulled out the dress. It was teal silk, floor length, with delicate silver beading along the neckline. Grandma had given it to me for my 21st birthday. "For when you need to feel powerful," she'd said. I hadn't worn it since her funeral. I laid it across my bed and stared at it, trying to convince myself that tomorrow would be fine, that my parents genuinely wanted to celebrate me, that Meredith's comment about plans meant nothing. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was short. "Don't go tomorrow. It's not what you think." My heart stopped. I typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared. Then nothing. When I tried to call, the number was already disconnected. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, pulse racing. A prank? A wrong number? Or something else? My eyes drifted to the wooden box on my nightstand. Grandma's box. The one I'd been too afraid to open. Slowly, I lifted the lid. Inside was a handwritten letter, folded neatly, and beneath it an old photograph. 2 young women standing arm in arm, laughing. One was clearly my mother, decades younger. The other, I didn't recognize. I unfolded the letter. Grandma's handwriting. Shaky, but legible. My dearest Ingrid. I couldn't read it. Not yet. If I read it tonight, I'd lose whatever courage I had left. I needed to believe, just for one more day, that my parents might actually love me. I tucked the letter into my purse, just in case. Then I hung the teal dress on my door and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, everything would change. I just didn't know how much. The Sterling looked different at night. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, the kind of quiet that costs money. I'd only been here twice before, both times for Meredith. The hostess smiled when I gave my name. Ah, yes, the Spencer party. Right this way. She led me down a corridor lined with oil paintings, past the main dining room, through a set of heavy oak doors. Your private room, she said, and opened them. 53 faces turned to look at me. I froze in the doorway. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen since childhood. Great aunts I'd forgotten existed. Second cousins I couldn't name. They filled a massive U-shaped table that dominated the room, all of them dressed in their Sunday best, all of them staring. My heart hammered. This was a surprise party. It had to be. All these people gathered for me. But there were no balloons, no streamers, no cake. No one shouted happy birthday. Just silence. And staring. I spotted my parents at the head of the table. Mom wore pearls. Dad wore his surgeon's face, blank, clinical. Meredith sat beside them, unable to meet my eyes. And in the center of the U, directly facing the entrance, was a single, empty chair. For me. I walked toward it slowly, heels clicking on marble, feeling every gaze like a physical weight. The room was too quiet, too still, like a courtroom before the verdict. A microphone stand stood at the head of the table, next to my father's seat. That's when I noticed her. A woman in the far corner, gray-streaked hair, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. She looked familiar somehow, and worried. My mother was smiling, that smile she wore when she was about to win. Ingrid, she gestured to the empty chair. Sit, we've been waiting. I had barely sat down when my father stood up. He picked up a champagne glass and a silver spoon. Tap, tap, tap. The room fell silent, though it was already silent. Every eye shifted from me to him. Thank you all for coming tonight. His voice carried like he was addressing a surgical theater. We've gathered here for a family matter. Not to celebrate Ingrid, not for my daughter's birthday, a family matter. My stomach turned to ice. As many of you know, he continued, our daughter Ingrid has made choices that have concerned us. She abandoned her education. She refused to pursue a respectable career. She's lived in ways that don't reflect our family's values. Murmurs rippled through the room. I heard someone whisper, always knew she was trouble. My father's eyes found mine, cold, final. Victoria and I have tried everything, patience, support, guidance, but Ingrid refuses to change. She refuses to honor her family. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, the performance of a lifetime. Therefore, my father said, as of tonight, we are making a formal announcement. He paused. The room held its breath. Ingrid Spencer is no longer a member of this family. The words hit me like a physical blow. Gasps scattered through the crowd. Cousin Linda covered her mouth. Uncle George shook his head slowly. Is this really happening? Someone whispered. My mother stood, smoothing her skirt. We gave her every opportunity. Her voice trembled with practiced grief. She chose shame over family. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 53 pairs of eyes burned into me, and I was 15 again, standing in my parents' living room, being told I was too much trouble to keep. Then my mother reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The paper landed in front of me with a soft slap. Sign this, my mother said, and we'll let you leave with your dignity intact. I looked down. The words blurred, then sharpened. Legal letterhead, paragraphs of fine print, and at the bottom, a signature line with my name typed beneath it. Voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights. The beach house. This was about the beach house. It had always been about the beach house. Everything clicked into place. The surprise invitation, the family matter. 53 witnesses assembled in their Sunday best. They hadn't gathered everyone to disown me. They'd gathered everyone to pressure me into signing away Grandma's house. The disownment was just leverage, theater designed to break me. You planned this, I breathed. We planned an intervention, my mother corrected smoothly, for your own good. I spotted a man in a gray suit near the door, Mr. Thornton, our family's lawyer. He was already holding a notary stamp, ready to make everything official. My mother leaned closer, her perfume suffocating. 53 witnesses, Ingrid. Your grandmother's lawyer won't be able to argue with that kind of family consensus. She tapped the paper with one manicured nail. Sign. Walk away quietly. This doesn't have to be harder than it already is. The room waited. I could feel them watching, some with pity, some with contempt, some with the morbid curiosity people have at car accidents. My hands were shaking, my vision was blurring. They had turned my 30th birthday into a courtroom, and I was already convicted. But somewhere beneath the panic, something else stirred, something harder. I thought of Grandma's letter, still folded in my purse. I thought of the woman in the corner, watching. My mother pushed a pen toward me. Sign, she said. Now. I picked up the pen. I know. Right now, you're probably as angry as I was in that moment. The pen in my hand. 53 people watching. My own mother's eyes drilling into me like I was a problem to be solved. If you've ever been treated like a tool instead of a person by your own family, type "I understand" in the comments. And if you want to know what happened next, drop a like so I know you're still here with me. Now, back to that restaurant. The pen hovered over the paper. My hand wouldn't move. Sign it, my mother's eyes commanded. End this. But something made me look up. Not at her, not at my father, at the room. 53 faces stared back at me. Most of them I barely knew. Distant relatives who appeared at funerals and weddings, who exchanged Christmas cards we never read. They'd been summoned here as witnesses, as weapons. And then I saw her again. The woman in the corner, gray-streaked hair pulled back simply. A plain black dress that didn't try to impress anyone. She sat apart from the others, near the back, half hidden by a potted palm. She wasn't looking at me with contempt or pity like the others. She was looking at me like she was trying to send a message. Stay calm. Wait. I noticed her hands resting on a leather bag in her lap, a bag that looked fuller than it should be, stuffed with something. Papers, maybe. Or something else entirely. My mother noticed me staring. Her head turned sharply toward the corner, and for the first time that night, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear. It was gone in an instant, smoothed over with practiced control. But I saw it. Ingrid. My mother's voice was ice now. Focus. Sign the paper. Who was this woman? Why did my mother, who feared nothing and no one, look at her like that? And why did something about her face feel so familiar, like looking at an old photograph I couldn't quite place? Ingrid, my father's voice this time, impatient. We're all waiting. I set the pen down, not signing, not yet. Not. Can I have a moment, I said, to collect myself? My mother's smile tightened. Of course, darling. But her eyes never left the woman in the corner. The room pressed in on me, the whispers, the stares, the weight of 53 judgments. But in the chaos, I heard another voice, soft, familiar, speaking from somewhere deep in my memory. Never let them make you small, sweetheart. And if they try, you have everything you need. Grandma had said that to me the last time I saw her, 2 weeks before she died. She'd held my hands in hers, so thin by then, so fragile, and looked at me with eyes that still burned bright. I left you more than a house, Ingrid. Her voice had been barely a whisper, but fierce. I left you the truth. I hadn't understood what she meant. Not then, but I was beginning to understand now. Under the table, my hand slipped into my purse. My fingers found the edge of the envelope. Grandma's letter, still unread. I'd been too afraid to open it last night, too desperate to believe this dinner might actually be what my parents claimed. That hope was ash now. Whatever was in that letter, Grandma had wanted me to have it. She'd known something. About my mother. About this family. About what they would try to do once she was gone. I looked up at the room full of people who wanted me to disappear quietly. At my mother, who had orchestrated this public execution. At my father, who couldn't meet my eyes. Then I looked at the woman in the corner. She was still watching. Still waiting. Her hand rested on that overstuffed bag. I wasn't alone. I didn't know how or why yet, but I wasn't alone. Something settled in my chest. Not calm exactly. Resolve. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I do have something to say. My mother's smile flickered. What? Give me the microphone. My mother laughed. Short, sharp, dismissive. The microphone? Ingrid, this isn't a performance. Then why is there a mic set up? I gestured to the stand by my father's seat. You planned every detail of this. The seating arrangement, the witnesses, the lawyer in the corner with his notary stamp. You wanted an audience, so let me speak to them. A ripple of murmurs moved through the room. Uncle George shifted uncomfortably. Cousin Linda exchanged glances with her husband. My mother's eyes narrowed. This wasn't the script she'd written. Fine, she said, her voice turning to honey. But first, let's make sure everyone here understands exactly who they're dealing with. She straightened her spine, addressing the room like a prosecutor delivering closing arguments. My daughter had every opportunity. We offered to pay for medical school. She refused. We offered her a position at the family practice. She chose to play with clay instead. Someone snickered. I couldn't tell who. Her first gallery show? My mother's voice dripped with pity. 3 people attended. 3. One of them was a homeless man looking for free wine. Heat rushed to my face. That show had been 8 years ago. I'd cried for a week afterward, and she'd saved it, weaponized my lowest moment to use against me now. And when she was 23, my mother continued, her voice rising, desperate and broke. Do you know what she did? She came to us, begging for money. She turned to face me, triumph in her eyes. She's always been the weak one, emotional, unstable. Is this really the person you want clinging to mother's estate? My eyes burned, but I would not cry. Not here. Not for her. Are you done? I asked quietly. My mother smiled. Sweetheart, I'm just getting started. She had no idea. So was I. That's when Meredith stood up. My little sister. The golden child. The one who got everything I was denied. The praise, the support, the belief that she could be something. She pressed her hand to her heart, wearing an expression of exquisite sorrow. I tried, you know. I really tried with her. The room turned to watch her performance. I visited her studio last week. Meredith's voice trembled beautifully. I asked if we could talk about Grandma's house, find a compromise, and do you know what she told me? She paused. Perfect timing. She'd learned it from our mother. She said Grandma's house means more to her than her own family. Gasps scattered through the room. Someone clicked their tongue in disapproval. That's not what I said, I interjected. It's what you meant. Meredith's eyes met mine, cold, triumphant. You've always cared more about things than people. That's why you're alone. I stared at her, my little sister, who I'd protected from playground bullies, who I'd covered for when she snuck out at 16, who I'd believed was just caught in the middle of our parents' dysfunction. She wasn't caught in the middle. She was part of it. She'd probably helped plan this whole thing. You see? My mother spread her hands. We have no choice. This is an intervention. For her own good, my father added. For everyone's good, Meredith finished. The three of them stood together at the head of the table, a united front, a family without me. Uncle George leaned forward. Maybe you should just sign, Ingrid. Don't make this harder. Aunt Linda nodded. Think about your parents' reputation. The walls were closing in. The room was shrinking. And then my father picked up the pen and held it out to me. Last chance. The pen hovered between us. Black ink, silver barrel. Such a small thing to hold so much weight. Sign it, my mother said, or walk out that door and never speak to any of us again. 53 people held their breath. I could hear the soft clink of ice in water glasses, the distant hum of the restaurant kitchen, someone's watch ticking. I looked at the paper, the legal jargon blurred together, but I understood enough. My signature would give them the house, Grandma's house, the only place I'd ever felt like myself. I looked at my parents. No love in their eyes, no regret, just impatience. They wanted this over. I looked at Meredith. She was biting her lip, trying to look sad. But I knew that look. That was her waiting to win look. And then I looked at the woman in the corner. She gave me the slightest nod. Her hand moved to her bag. Something shifted in my chest. Not hope exactly. Something harder, clearer. I thought, a real family wouldn't do this. I thought, Grandma would never have wanted this. I thought, I've spent 30 years trying to earn their love. What if I stopped? My hand closed around the pen. I felt its weight. My mother smiled. Then I set it down. No. The word fell like a stone into still water. What did you say? My mother whispered. I said no. I pushed back my chair and stood. I'm not signing, but I am going to say something. I reached for the microphone. My father lunged to stop me, but I was faster. You wanted an audience, I said into the mic, my voice ringing through the room. So let me give them a show. And I finally understood what Grandma meant. I had everything I needed. The microphone felt solid in my hand, real, grounding. My mother's face had gone pale. My father was half standing, unsure whether to charge at me or pretend this was all part of the plan. I didn't give them time to decide. Thank you all for coming tonight. My voice was steady, calmer than I felt. I have a few things I'd like to share. Ingrid, my mother started. You had your turn. I met her eyes. Now it's mine. The room shifted. I felt the attention swing toward me. Not as the defendant anymore, but as something else. Someone with something to say. 6 months ago, my grandmother, Rosemary Harmon, passed away. Most of you knew her. She was kind, she was generous. She was the only person in this family who ever made me feel like I mattered. A few people nodded. Grandma had been loved. She left me her beach house, not because I asked for it, not because I manipulated her, because she wanted me to have it. Because... My voice caught. I steadied it. Because she knew what would happen once she was gone. I reached into my purse. Before she died, she left me a letter. I was too scared to read it until last night. I pulled out the envelope. But I think it's time you all heard what she had to say. My mother's face went from pale to gray. Ingrid, don't, she said. Not a command this time. Almost a plea. But I was done listening to her. My dearest Ingrid, I began reading. If you're reading this at a family gathering, things have gone exactly as I feared they would. The room went absolutely still, and the woman in the corner stood up. I continued reading, my grandmother's words filling the silent room. Victoria has always seen people as tools to be used. She tried to take this house from me once, 10 years ago. Tried to convince me I was too old to manage my own affairs. When I refused, she stopped visiting. I heard someone gasp. Uncle George's wife, I think. I knew she would try again with you, sweetheart. She'll use guilt. She'll use family. She'll make you feel small and selfish for wanting what's rightfully yours. I looked at my mother. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles had gone white. But you are not small. You are not selfish. And this house is not just property. It's proof that someone in this family loved you without condition. My voice wavered. I steadied it. I. I've left you something else too. Something your mother doesn't know about. If you're reading this in front of witnesses, and knowing Victoria, you probably are, look for your Aunt Patricia, my other daughter, the one Victoria erased 20 years ago. The room erupted in whispers. Other daughter? Victoria has a sister? I didn't know. Patricia has been waiting, I continued reading. She has proof of everything Victoria has done. Not just to you, to me, to her, to anyone who got in the way. I lowered the letter and looked at the woman in the corner. She was standing now, a sad smile on her face. My mother had gone completely still, like a deer in headlights. "Hello, Victoria," the woman said, her voice carrying across the room. "It's been 20 years. Did you miss me?" My mother's mouth opened. No sound came out. I had an aunt, and she'd been waiting for this moment for 2 decades. Patricia walked toward the table, and the crowd parted for her like water. She moved with the calm of someone who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. Every step measured, every breath controlled. "Mom invited me," she said, addressing the room. "Before she died, she said, 'When Victoria makes her move, be there for Ingrid.' You have no right to be here." My mother found her voice, shrill and cracking. "You were cut off. You're not part of this family." "I was cut off because I threatened to tell the truth." Patricia stopped at the edge of the table, directly across from Victoria. 20 years ago, I found out what you were doing with Mom's accounts, skimming money, forging her signature, isolating her from anyone who might notice." The whispers grew louder. Uncle George stood halfway up, then sat back down. "Lies," my mother hissed. "She's always been jealous, unstable." "That's what you told everyone." Patricia nodded slowly. "That I was crazy, delusional, that Mom couldn't trust me." She turned to face the room. "But Mom never believed you. She just didn't have the strength to fight you anymore." "Patricia," my father's voice cut through, "this is inappropriate. Whatever grievances you have—" "Grievances?" Patricia laughed softly. "Richard, do you even know what your wife did? Or were you too busy pretending not to notice?" My father's jaw tightened. He looked away. "I didn't come here to rehash ancient history," Patricia said. "I came because Mom asked me to, because she knew Victoria would do to Ingrid exactly what she did to me, what she tried to do to her." She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "And because," she said quietly, "I have proof." Patricia held up her phone like evidence in a courtroom. "Before Mom passed, she gave me one last task." Her voice was steady, carrying across the silent room. "She knew Victoria would make a move on Ingrid eventually. She just didn't know when." My mother's face had gone gray. "Patricia, whatever you think you have." 3 months before she died, Mom installed a voice-activated recorder in her living room. Patricia's eyes never left Victoria's. She told me where to find it, told me to wait until Victoria showed her hand. She pressed play. The first voice was my mother's, crystal clear. "We'll do it at her birthday dinner. Maximum witnesses. Maximum pressure." My father's voice next. "And if she refuses to sign?" "She won't refuse." My mother again, confident, cruel. "She's always been the weak one. This will be easy. One public shaming, and she'll fold like she always does." Then Meredith. "What if she makes a scene?" "Let her." My mother laughed. 53 witnesses watching her have a meltdown? That only helps our case. We can say she's unstable, contest the will on those grounds." Patricia paused the recording. The room was frozen. I could hear someone's sharp intake of breath. Uncle George had his hand over his mouth. "There's more," Patricia said quietly. 20 minutes of it. Every detail of tonight's plan. including how you'd use all of them. She gestured to the assembled relatives, as props in your little theater. That recording was obtained without consent, my mother hissed, grasping at straws. Single-party consent state. Patricia's voice was calm. Mom was in her own home. It's admissible anywhere. The silence stretched. Then Uncle George spoke, his voice heavy. Victoria, what have you done? My mother had no answer. Now I know what you might be wondering. Why did Patricia help? Why wait 20 years? The answer is simple. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones who've walked the same path first. Patricia knew what it felt like to be erased by my mother. She wasn't about to let it happen again. Have you ever had someone like that in your life? Type yes in the comments if you have. And if you want to see how my mother reacted to being exposed, stay with me. The best part is coming. The room was still reeling when I picked up the microphone again. Not to attack, not to gloat, just to be clear. Mom, Dad. I looked at them directly. You wanted to disown me tonight? Consider it done. My mother opened her mouth to interrupt. But not on your terms, I continued. On mine. I turned to face the room, all 53 witnesses my parents had so carefully assembled. I will not sign that paper. Not tonight. Not ever. My voice was steady now, steadier than I'd ever heard it. The beach house was left to me by my grandmother, legally and rightfully. Her will was clear. Her intentions were documented. I looked directly at Mr. Thornton, the lawyer still clutching his useless notary stamp in the corner. And for the record, Grandma's will includes a protective clause. Any document signed under duress or coercion is automatically void. I gestured around the room. Your 53 witnesses? They just watched you attempt to coerce me. On camera. I pointed to the Sterling security dome in the ceiling. In a restaurant with surveillance. Mr. Thornton's face went pale. He quietly slipped the notary stamp back into his briefcase. That clause also states that any family member who attempts to contest the will through manipulation forfeits their own inheritance from the estate. I let that sink in. Watched my mother's jaw tighten. Watched my father's face drain of color. So by all means, Mom, contest it. See what you have left when you're done. Silence. Absolute silence. And one more thing. I set down the microphone with a soft thunk. I didn't bring shame to this family. I brought inconvenience. There's a difference. I chose to live my life instead of performing in yours. That's not a crime. It's called growing up. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Meredith. She was crying now, though I couldn't tell if it was shame or self-pity. I'm leaving now, I said. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome. I turned toward the door, and I didn't look back. I was 3 steps from the door when my mother lost control. This is ridiculous! Her voice cracked like a whip. Patricia has always been jealous, a liar. She was never stable. Victoria. Uncle George's voice cut through, heavy, disappointed. Stop. My mother wheeled on him. George, you can't possibly believe. We all heard the recording. He stood slowly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. We heard you planning this, planning to humiliate your own daughter for money. For Meredith's clinic, for the family. For yourself. Aunt Linda rose to stand beside her husband. It's always been for yourself, Victoria. We just didn't want to see it. The dam broke. Voices erupted from around the table. I can't believe we came here for this. 20 years you said Patricia was crazy. Poor Rosemary. She must have known all along. My mother spun in circles, trying to address each accusation, each desertion. But they kept coming. My father remained frozen in his seat, staring at the tablecloth like it held the answers to everything that had gone wrong. He didn't defend her. He didn't defend himself. He just sat there. Meredith had her head in her hands, mascara running down her cheeks. This wasn't supposed to happen, I heard her whisper. This wasn't the plan. The plan failed. Patricia's voice was gentle, almost pitying. They usually do when they're built on cruelty. People were standing now, gathering their coats, heading for the door. "Where are you going?" my mother demanded. "We're not finished." But they were finished. With her. With this. "Ingrid," her voice turned desperate. "Ingrid, wait. We can talk about this." I stopped at the door. "No, Mom," I said quietly. "We really can't." And I walked out. The night air hit my face like a blessing. Cool, clean, free. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Sterling, my heart pounding, my hands still trembling. But I was smiling. I couldn't help it. I was actually smiling. "Ingrid, wait!" I turned. 3 figures were hurrying out the restaurant door. Young faces, worried faces. Emma, Tyler, and Lily, my younger cousins. Emma reached me first, slightly out of breath. "Can we come with you?" I blinked. "What?" "We don't want to stay in there." Tyler jerked his thumb back toward the restaurant. That was insane. What they tried to do to you." Lily nodded vigorously. She was only 19, the youngest of the 3. "My mom always said I should be more like Meredith, but I think—" She hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "I think I'd rather be like you." Something cracked open in my chest. Not pain this time, something warmer. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Your parents—" "Can make their own choices," Emma said firmly, "just like we can make ours." Behind them, I could see more people streaming out of the Sterling. Some got into cars quickly, heads down, wanting to escape the fallout. Others stood in clusters, talking in low, urgent voices. And through the glass doors, I could still see my mother. She was standing alone now, arms wrapped around herself, watching everyone leave. "You'll regret this!" Her voice carried through the door, muffled but audible. "All of you!" Nobody turned around. "Come on," I said to my cousins. "There's a diner 2 blocks from here. I could use some coffee." "And pie," Tyler added. "Definitely pie." We walked away together. 4 of us. A new kind of family. Behind us, the door of the Sterling swung shut. That night, after the diner, after saying goodbye to the cousins, I went home alone. My apartment felt different, smaller somehow, but also safer. I sat on my bed in the dark, still wearing the teal dress, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. I cried. Not the pretty kind of crying, the messy, ugly, heaving kind. The kind that comes from years of holding your breath and finally letting go. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Voicemails I couldn't bring myself to check. I imagined my mother leaving increasingly frantic messages, alternating between rage and false sweetness. I turned the phone off. In the silence, I thought about what I'd lost that night. My parents, my sister, the fantasy that if I just tried hard enough, they would love me. But that fantasy had been hurting me for 30 years. It was time to let it die. I thought about the look on my father's face when the recording played. No shock, no horror, just resignation. He'd known. He'd always known what my mother was capable of. He'd just chosen to look away. I thought about Meredith, crying into her hands. Not for me, for herself, for the money she wasn't going to get, the bailout that wasn't coming. They had never seen me as a daughter or a sister. I was a resource, a problem, a piece on their chessboard just like Grandma said. But not anymore. I picked up Grandma's letter from where I'd dropped it on my nightstand. Read the last lines again. "Don't mourn the family you deserved, sweetheart. Build the one you choose." I folded the letter carefully and held it against my chest. "Okay, Grandma. I will." The fallout came faster than I expected. Emma called me a week later with updates, her voice bright with vindicated glee. "Uncle George and Aunt Linda pulled their investment from Meredith's clinic," she reported. "Said they couldn't trust the family's financial judgment after what they witnessed." I leaned back in my studio chair. "That's significant." "It gets better." Emma was practically giddy. 3 of Mom's friends from church stopped talking to her. Word got out about the birthday intervention. People are calling it that now, like it's a scandal. It was a scandal. My mother had built her entire identity around being the perfect matriarch, respectable, admired, in control. Now everyone knew the truth. And your dad? I asked carefully. Dropped out of the golf club. Emma's voice softened. He told someone he was taking time to reflect. I think that's code for too embarrassed to show his face. A week after that, Meredith called me. I almost didn't answer. You ruined everything. Her voice was raw, broken. My clinic might have to close now. I closed my eyes. That's not my burden to carry, Meredith. It never was. It's a family burden. No, it was a Meredith burden that you tried to make mine. There's a difference. Silence on the line. Then, I can't believe you did this to us. I didn't do anything to you. I kept my voice steady. I just refused to let you do it to me. She hung up without another word. I set my phone down and looked around my studio, at the pottery wheels, the half-finished pieces, the life I'd built despite everything they'd said about me, the life I was finally free to live. Patricia and I met for coffee on a rainy Tuesday. She looked different in daylight, softer, less like a secret weapon, and more like what she was, a woman who'd spent 20 years carrying a heavy truth. I owe you an explanation, she said, wrapping her hands around her mug, about what happened, why I disappeared. I'd like that. She took a deep breath. 20 years ago, I found receipts, bank statements. Your mother had been siphoning money from Mom's accounts for years, small amounts at first, then bigger. When I confronted her, Patricia paused. She didn't deny it. She just smiled and said, "Who's going to believe you?" I felt sick. And no one did. No one wanted to. Victoria was the successful one. The doctor. The golden child. Patricia laughed bitterly. Sound familiar? Meredith. History repeating. She nodded. When I threatened to go to the police, Victoria told everyone I was having a breakdown, paranoid delusions. She even got a family friend, a psychiatrist, to suggest I needed rest. By the time I could defend myself, I was already the crazy sister. But Grandma knew. Grandma always knew. Patricia's eyes glistened. She just didn't have the strength to fight Victoria anymore. So she planned, she waited, she set things up so that when Victoria finally made her move on you, I'd be there. 20 years of waiting, I murmured. That's a long time. It was. Patricia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But you were worth it. Mom thought so. And now I know why. We sat in comfortable silence, rain streaking down the windows. Your mother doesn't hate you, Ingrid, Patricia finally said. She fears you, because you're the one thing she couldn't control. I let that truth settle into my bones. 1 month later, I stood on the deck of Grandma's beach house, watching the sun set over the water. The house was exactly as she'd left it. Faded floral curtains, mismatched pottery on every shelf, some hers, some mine, all made with love. The smell of salt air and old wood and something indefinable that just felt like her. I'd been here 3 times since the dinner. Each time it hurt a little less. This time, it almost felt like coming home. I'd started teaching pottery classes on weekends. Nothing fancy, just a folding table on the deck, a portable wheel, and whoever wanted to learn. Emma came to the first one, Lily to the second. Tyler showed up last week, sheepish, claiming he was just curious. Patricia visited every Sunday for dinner. We were building something neither of us had expected. A family, small, imperfect, chosen. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Lily wants to know if you're doing a class tomorrow. She's bringing a friend. I smiled and typed back. Always room for more. I leaned against the deck railing and thought about Grandma. About her standing in this exact spot, watching the same ocean, making the same choice every day to hold on to what mattered. She'd given me more than a house. She'd given me proof that love didn't have to be earned through obedience, that belonging didn't require losing yourself. Thank you, I whispered to the wind. The waves crashed below, steady and eternal. Somewhere out there, my parents were still spinning their stories, rewriting history, pretending they were the victims. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had pottery to make, students to teach, a life to live. And for the first time in 30 years, I was exactly where I belonged. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was trimming a vase when my phone lit up with a name I'd blocked twice already. Mom. I hesitated. Then, for reasons I still don't fully understand, I answered. Ingrid. Her voice was different, quieter, but still sharp underneath. Your father is reconsidering his will. No, hello. No, how are you? Just straight to leverage. I see. If you apologize, publicly, and sign over the beach house, we might reconsider your place in the family. I set down my trimming tool, looked out the window at the ocean. Mom, I said slowly, I'm going to say this once. I'm listening. I don't need your will. I have everything I need. I don't need your approval. I've learned to live without it. And I don't need a place in a family that treats love like a transaction. Silence on the line. You'll regret this, she said finally. When you're old and alone, I'm not alone. I thought of Patricia, Emma, Tyler, Lily, the students who came every weekend to learn. I have family, real family. They just don't share your name. I could hear her breathing, sharp, angry. But Mom, I paused, surprised by what I was about to say. If you ever want a real relationship, not control, not obedience, just honesty, my door is open. Those are my terms. The silence stretched. Goodbye, Ingrid. Click. I stared at my phone for a long moment. Then I set it down, picked up my trimming tool, and went back to my vase. She never called again. I kept my door open anyway, not because I expected her to walk through it, but because I refused to become her. Some boundaries are walls. Others are invitations. I chose the second. So that's my story. On my 30th birthday, my parents tried to publicly disown me in front of 53 relatives. They thought shame would make me small. They thought pressure would make me break. They were wrong. If you're watching this and you recognize your family in mine, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you know what this feels like. The constant second-guessing, the hunger for approval that never comes. The way you twist yourself into smaller and smaller shapes, hoping that this time, this version of you will finally be enough. It won't be, because the problem was never you. I want you to know something. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose who deserves a place in your life and who doesn't. Blood doesn't equal family. Shared history doesn't equal love. And staying silent while people hurt you isn't loyalty. It's self-destruction. My 30th birthday was supposed to be my lowest moment. Instead, it became my turning point. The night I stopped asking permission to exist. The night I learned that the people who try hardest to make you small are usually the ones most afraid of what you'll become. 3 weeks later, I'm standing in my grandmother's house, building a life she would have been proud of. Teaching, creating, learning how to take up space without apologizing for it. It's not easy. Some days it still hurts. But I wouldn't trade this pain for the old numbness. Not for anything. They wanted to make me small. Instead, they showed me exactly how big I needed to become. And that, I think, is the best revenge of all. A good life, lived on your own terms. Thank you for being here with me. If this story touched something in you, type boundaries in the comments, because that's the most important lesson I learned. And if you want to hear more stories about standing up for yourself, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Check the description for more stories like this one. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, you deserve people who love you without conditions. Take care of yourself.